Welcome to Inside Creative Minds. I'm your host, Trey Goodman. We have a very interesting show for you this time. We're going to be talking about the art of landscaping, but before that, let's meet Joshua and Adam, two glass-blowing artists. Well, Adam and Josh, welcome to Inside Creative Minds. We're here at the Sky Cafe in Mesa.
Thank you, Trey.
Yeah.
Thank you, Trey.
Now, you guys are glass artists, glass-blowing artists. What's the background and what got you guys together?
Well, background here for me is kind of a family affair.
Okay.
I started back in somewhere around '97, taking a class with my dad and my older brother. They took a class all on their own. I said, "Wow, that's really awesome. Why didn't you include me?" Since then, I've been kind of tagging along and learning as it goes. So.
Wow. And Josh?
I have always wanted to be an artist ever since I was a kid, and in art school, my program had a glass blowing studio, and I tried it, fell in love with the material.
Just immediately, huh? Wow.
And the rest is history, yeah. So.
Well, what brought you guys together?
Well, we started working together down at a local shop here in town, Circle 6.
Circle 6?
Yeah, and we're also instructors at the Mesa Arts Center. So we do a lot of work there. We're both artists in residence at that studio. So we do a lot of trading time between each other. So it's not necessarily a solo affair. So you really like to have a partner that you can trust, that knows his way around the glass studio.
As we're talking, we're also looking at your work, and we were lucky enough to actually go into a session. What do you actually call that?
A blow slot.
A blow slot. And so explain why there's more than one person involved in that. And like you said, it's nice to have a partner. What happened?
Okay. Well, in today, when they were in there, we have a gaffer who's in charge of the actual piece. So today, for instance, it was me. It was my idea and everything. Right. So Josh kind of came in, thankfully helped me out a little bit as the assistant. So you always have at least a first assistant, but sometimes we have up to 6 people working on a project all at once.
6 people.
So,
there's a lot going on in a big piece. When you're doing large-scale work particularly, you need somebody there to help you shield you from the heat. Just take the...
How hot's that get?
It gets pretty hot. The glass from the furnace is around 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit.
I've caught on fire while working.
Me too.
How do you put yourself out?
Drop and roll.
Now you talk about, you said large pieces that might need more than one assistant or two. How large a piece are we talking about?
Well, when we work somewhere in like this sort of range, you can do that with 1 or 2. But you're really struggling. If you have a third guy, all of a sudden your arm doesn't catch on fire or things like that. You get people to help you out.
So you guys are working with fire every day. You obviously enjoy the fire thing, right?
Oh yeah.
What's the best part about being a glass artist?
Getting to play with a molten material. That's really, it's alive. It's really, really beautiful to look at. It changes color. It changes shape. You're constantly battling gravity to keep it on center.
How do you feel about that?
For me, I think the creativity of working with glass is just a real turn on. Every time I get into the hot shop, and what's really interesting is when something goes wrong and I have to improvise. Happy accidents happen.
Now, how does it go wrong? Take us through the process just briefly. Like, how would something go wrong?
Well, I mean, that's relative. It depends on what you're making. Like, if you have a very specific thing you're trying to make, right?
Yeah, okay.
And
you could have a millimeter of extra glass on one side of the vessel than the other, and when you blow out, all of a sudden it blows one way instead of nice and proportional.
Yeah.
So suddenly you're making sculpture.
Yeah, and it could get too cold and then it explodes, or you can be too cold and go into the heat and then it explodes.
It's certainly not a simple thing. Not just anybody can just go in there and start messing around.
It's a pretty steep learning curve.
Yeah.
I mean,
you can. We both teach beginning glass blowing, and in the course of a couple hours, we get you to learn how to make a full vessel.
Oh.
It's not going to be the most beautiful thing in the world, but it probably sits on your shelf for the rest of your life.
What's the glass blowing community like here in the Valley?
Well, it's relatively small. I'd say there's about 6 of us that are really kind of out there in the field. We count on each other to be available for blow slots. When we need to put that team together, it's actually available.
So you'll help Josh. I mean, you guys just a little community going on.
So consequently, not a lot. For a city as big as Phoenix, it's
I think
pretty
there's
small.
only about 3 major studios in town. So
How is the glass art? How's that viewed in the art world? How are people looking at that?
Well, I think that glass has a funny sort of title. I mean, we call it glass art,
Right.
but it's somewhat of a craft, really, and I think that there's a lot of discrepancy there in the glass world in particular. Some artists really see themselves as artists, and the fine art world doesn't see them quite that way. They look at the glass artists more as, you know, decorative artists or craftspeople.
Crafters.
But it's all creative, though, right? I mean, I mean, how do you guys see it?
Color palette,
Yeah.
blob of molten glass, and about an hour later, I'm gonna make something that's gonna be beautiful. It's gonna decorate somebody's home, hopefully, or it's gonna decorate my home. If my wife likes it that much, it doesn't go for sale.
Well, speaking of that, I know you guys each brought in a piece, so let's take a look just briefly, and maybe you can kind of explain a little bit. Okay, this is
one of
your,
my vessels.
your piece. Okay.
This is a new series that I just started up. It's called The Heart of Stone.
So now, when you say series, that means there's going to be more than one. I assume.
I currently have about 5 of these truly finished,
Okay.
and I've got about 4 more sitting in waiting. I'm searching for the right stones. So in these pieces, I've incorporated the geology plus the glass art.
Now you say geology because you have a
I have a degree
in that.
bachelor's
So
from ASU.
right. So thematically, you've bring in geology into
Well,
that.
like in these ones specifically, the stone on the inside is a piece of chalcopyrite,
Okay.
and the colors that I use on the exterior either match just through the color or
Right.
also some of the specific chemical elements that are involved in
Wow.
making of both things. There's a little bit of similarity there.
Okay. Cool. Man, that is really cool. Let's take a look at what Josh brought. That's really cool, man. You guys do some great stuff. This is very interesting, Josh.
Thanks.
So what is this?
This is an amorphous sculpture. I started working on this type of look to the glass
Right.
about 9 years ago, and oftentimes they'll be cast glass, they'll be solid. About 4 years ago, I started blowing them. So this is actually a blown vessel, and what I then do is I go back and carve the surface with diamond tools.
So this is carved?
It's all carved
Wow.
with diamond tools, yeah.
Wow.
And then it's slightly sandblasted and then acid etched.
How long would it take for you to do a piece like this?
Well, the blowing part is, you know, about an hour,
Yeah.
you know, in the shop, and then it cools down for about 8 hours, 10 hours, and then
Then to do
the
all the-
carving,
yeah.
that probably takes me 2 or 3 days, and then another couple days of finishing. So,
This reminds me of like a giant fish. It's so cool, though.
yeah, it references a lot of different things. Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and put the little fish away. So, do you guys both work on various like themes and series, or
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Josh does a beautiful set of bouquets, vases along with glass flowers.
Yeah.
How do you decide how to start it, when to start a series, when to end a series? I mean, is that just a creative process, or?
It is. It's a total creative
Yeah.
process. And I go back to, you know, series. Like, I originally, about 15 years ago, I started a series of architectural pieces.
Oh, okay.
And I put them to bed and rest for a while I was working on that series.
Right.
And then about 5 years ago, I started to redo them again.
The same goes for me. I'll make 4 or 5 pieces in a series, kind of set back, put it on display somewhere, see how the public reacts to it. If they react really well, I'm going to revisit that series. I'm going to further extrapolate in that sort of mentality. Otherwise, I'm going to kind of move into a little bit different direction and further my own creative process there.
So you sort of just create what you feel, I assume, and then that becomes maybe a series, and then maybe go back to it later or something.
Yeah,
Where are you
focus
guys
on-
showing work at? Where's your work being shown at?
Well, mine's mostly through the Mesa Art Center store.
yeah.
There's some in the display cabinets there. I'm trying to find my way into some small galleries here and there, but mostly it's through art shows, small art shows in the valley.
And you, Josh?
I do some of the art shows in the valley as well. I also show at the Mesa Art Center store, and I show at a couple other boutiques around town, Made Gallery downtown.
Made, yes.
Yeah. And then my higher end pieces I show in some galleries around the country.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. What gets you guys excited about getting up and doing another piece? I mean,
Just getting to play with fire.
yeah.
That's about all I can say.
What do you think, Josh?
I just have to be creative. It's just I just have to. I have to make stuff.
So if you guys couldn't do this, what would you guys be doing?
I'd be mapping. I'd be doing geology in the field, hiking around and
Yeah.
picking up more rocks, which would get me back in this studio.
And you, Josh?
I come from a pretty creative family, so I'd be doing something creative for sure.
Yeah.
My sister's a chef. My mom's an interior designer.
Wow, yeah.
I have artists on both sides of my family. So
Well, speaking of creative, I know you guys got something called Highway Hot Shot. Now, that's very creative. Let's talk about that.
the Highway Hot Shop is a joint venture between Adam and I. We're building a mobile glass blowing studio, and we'll be traveling around the state and Phoenix to begin with.
It'll be mostly valley-wide for the first little bit, but
Doing demonstrations.
and education and entertainment.
So, I mean, it's going to pull up to a location, and what's going to happen?
We're going to turn it on for 24 hours, get it up to temperature, and then from that point until the end of whatever said contract or the end of a show, we are your entertainment. We are your educators.
So, you're going to actually do live glass blowing.
Yeah, demonstrations,
right
of
on the
course,
street.
and that's with lecture along through it. So we really walk people through. We're both very much into the education process.
Right.
So it's very important for you as a spectator to understand what's going on. Therefore, you have a little bit more appreciation for what's going on, because most people don't know what's happening there. You know.
How did this
It's-
idea come about? I mean, is this the first time this is happening?
For what, the mobile glass blowing
Yeah.
studio? There are others in the world.
Yeah.
Corning Museum of Glass has a really phenomenal.
But here in the valley, let's say?
Yes, here in the valley, I think that we're
Didn't Bruce have one?
yeah, he's Cottonwood.
Cottonwood.
So he's a little outside. And
So this will be a
now he
big
lives in
thing for
California.
Phoenix, though, right?
It is.
Oh, yeah,
And
we're-
I think our focus is certainly going to be a little bit different than this guy Bruce that I was talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a little bit more private artist. We really want to blow the doors off of it. We want to bring it out and say, this is glass blowing. There's places in town where you can do this.
Yeah.
You know, if this is something that you can pick up as a hobby,
Right.
or you can come down for a professional. You know, we'd like to talk to schools. We'd like to talk to the museums. We'd like to be everywhere.
What's
I
your
mean, I-
advice for new students, for people that they'll see this and go, wow, maybe I want to.
We'll take a class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
That
Get in
simple?
touch.
Start it, yeah.
Simple, get
Yeah,
involved.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can continue education courses, or if you want to go the full education route, you can find one of the many universities in town, or not in town, but throughout the country. And they offer glass blowing courses or glass casting. There's so many different types of art that can be created with glass.
Wow.
Not necessarily blowing, not necessarily just casting. We have fusing, we have lamp working, we have, you know, you name it. And people take broken pieces and just glue it together, and it's still made out of glass. It's just a beautiful medium.
What do you guys see for your future in the business? What are you wanting to do?
well, I will probably continue to work in glass for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
To some extent, I suspect. But I do other things, like I paint
Yeah.
and sculpt in other materials. So everything from bronze to wood. Yeah.
That's amazing. And you as well.
I imagine glass. If everything really works out, I will be here forever doing glass. I mean, I work with my family on a regular basis. I just had my little brother in from Seattle, so I got to bring him into the studio actually today, let him play around, you know. So it's just one of those, it's in the blood, it's not going anywhere. So I will be continuing with glass forever.
Well, hopefully we can catch up with you guys down the road and see how things are going.
Yeah, I'd like that.
It'd be great.
Thanks for being on the show, guys.
Thank you very much,
you,
Trey.
Trey.
Have a good day.
Hey guys, how cool was it to learn about glass blowing? I thought it was pretty cool. Hey, stick around and see what we got coming up next.
Brought to you by SCF Arizona, the state's largest provider of workers' compensation insurance. We help Arizona workers stay safe while helping Arizona's economy by keeping insurance costs low, giving money back to businesses, and giving back to the community. SCF Arizona, at work for you.
Supporting locally owned businesses is better for the economy, builds unique communities, and preserves the environment. Find out more at localfirstaz.com. Think local, buy local, be local.
Welcome back to Inside Creative Minds. Landscaping and art. Let's go see how those two work together. Well, Mark, welcome to Inside Creative Minds. We're here at the Sky Cafe in Mesa. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Trey. It's great to be here.
Now, the audience would like to know, you're a landscape artist, but not an architect.
That is
What's
correct.
the difference?
Well, I think a landscape architect has a little more boundaries and limitations to what they can create. They're a little
Okay.
more left brain,
Okay.
where a landscape artist
Yeah.
has no boundaries and you're just limited by your creativity.
So you're obviously very creative. We're going to be looking at your work today as we talk. Very creative stuff.
Thank you.
What got you started? What's your background in that?
Well, really, I was pursuing a career of writing and producing popular music.
Okay.
And I had bought a landscape maintenance business to supplement my income. When shortly after, people asked me if I had any suggestions how I could enhance their yard. So I said, well, sure I do.
Yeah.
And I started with some small vignettes and really enjoyed it and had a feel for it, and it just grew from there.
So, I mean, you obviously have a passion. I mean, you have a major landscape operation now.
Yes.
Take us through some of the process of what you have versus, you know, if somebody wants something done, what you can do.
Well, I think I first of all talk to the customer and get a sense of what they want to see happen.
Okay.
But I don't limit myself with what they say. I look more for their meaning.
Right,
And
okay.
I'm kind of looking for an expression or a expectation that they have.
Okay.
And then I pretend like I am them, and if it's my home, what would I do?
Okay.
And from that point forward, it becomes my home, and I really choose to please myself and satisfy myself, and then I know they're going to be really happy with the
Now,
results.
with the creative process, I mean, that can be very subjective at times. So, do you run into how do you keep your vision in front of what maybe they think? I don't know if that's sensible or not. How does
It's
that
a little hard to keep your creative juices flowing and being interdirective when you've got these external forces. But I think it starts with listening really well to the meaning of what they're saying. And when I lock in, I get in tune with that, then I'm comfortable enough and my confidence takes over, and they pretty much allow me to have free rein to do what I do.
And you love that,
I
right?
love it. It's very gratifying.
What would you do if you couldn't do that?
I would probably be writing or painting.
Now, I know on some of your work, we're talking, I get cactus, cacti, enormous, large,
Yes.
huge.
Yes.
How did you get to that level, and how do you maneuver that stuff around? I mean,
Well, you know, you don't start big, you start small, and
Yeah.
you work your way up. But I kind of have this instant gratification feeling. I don't want to wait 5 or 10 years. I want it now.
for the cactus to
Yeah.
grow, you mean?
I want it now.
Well, like a saguaro arm takes how long? I
Oh,
mean,
150
yeah,
years.
you haven't got that much time.
No, I don't. No. No.
Okay.
So we kind of go
Oh,
big or
right.
go home.
Yeah,
really
exactly.
bold
Right.
and be aggressive. And I've just worked on our technique and confidence to.
Well, what really attracted you to the art part of landscaping, though? I mean, what's the underlying attraction? What's the passion there?
Well, I think I'm creating an environment that people live in. It's actually like an interactive, multidimensional form of art.
Yeah.
And when you look at it that way, you create vignettes and you take the eye on a journey through the grounds and through the environment. Very gratifying to enhance someone's quality of their life by their surroundings.
What's the favorite part of your day?
Favorite part of my day is that little feeling I get, that little nervous, anxious that I get before I start a project, that I know that I'm going to be challenged creatively.
So take me through the process. I've got this yard, and I don't know what I want to do with it, I guess. But I hear maybe that you're the cactus guy. You've got all sorts of boulder. You know, you make some things happen.
Yeah, I would say just describe to me the paradise setting that you can envision living in, or the place that you go to, whether it's a resort, and the things that and the feelings you get when you're there.
Right.
And I start with that, and then I start putting a palette together based on creating that impression that they are giving me.
So do you have a plan in mind, or is it more organic? I mean, how do you know when you're finished?
Well, it's funny. We're not finished till I say it's done.
Oh,
so
okay.
you know,
Okay.
if I'm
Okay.
happy, they're going to be happy.
Right.
But I look at everything as a series of vignettes.
Okay.
I literally do a virtual picture tour of the grounds, and then I put them on 8x10 pictures, and
Okay.
I walk through it. And so I'm walking through it, and I start visualizing vignettes, finished pictures, and I think a complete job is just a series of strong vignettes that are hooked together.
So you're defining areas?
I
sort
define
of?
areas, yes.
Yeah.
I'm looking almost in pictures when I walk through, and I take you on a journey. And in my brain, I see I set an expectation,
Yeah.
and I don't know, and I kind of create it on the spot.
And how do colors and certain, I guess, rocks or how does that all fall in?
You know, it's just like a painter that's choosing his palette and depth and composition. You do the same things, but I'm looking for bold, interesting colors, lots of texture, elevation changes, create a rich foundation, and then layer and build on top of that. So I use everything at my disposal. I don't know any limitations. I put tropical cactus together, annual flowers and succulents, and it all works together. I'm looking for a visually stimulating vignette.
Let's talk about that. When you first started, I think you mentioned that some folks said maybe you can't do that.
Oh, yes.
Talk
yes, I
about
had
that.
A local landscape architect that told me that that I couldn't do.
You couldn't do what?
Oh, well, I couldn't put certain types of succulents and cactus and tropical plants together. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. I just did. And it looks really cool.
Were they going to call the landscape police on you?
Well, yeah, I said that they thought that they were, I was maybe violated some kind of code of ethics. And
Oh my
all
God.
I'm cared about is how cool it looks and how much joy it brings to my
So
customers.
you didn't really have this list of things like this goes with that. You just sort of felt what you.
I was just looking for shapes and textures. If it looked cool and I put it together, I just mixed and matched until I really was happy with the look.
Now, what do those folks say now?
Well, some of those folks are emulating some of our faux pas.
So how does
Yeah.
that make you feel?
It's wonderful.
So what would be in the valley some of your? Do you have any specials, some highlights, some things you're like, wow, this was like one of my really just great things.
Yeah, we have an interactive garden we did for the Herd Museum North
Okay.
that I just love.
Yeah. And
And-
why is that?
Oh, because they gave me free reign to create again. They had to turn me loose
Yeah.
and create anything I wanted to create. So it's an extension of me. I'm really expressing myself through this art form.
And is that your reward? What's the bottom line? Well, I know there's always money involved, but what's the actual reward?
Well, the money's secondary.
Yeah.
If I focus on the client, the money comes as a byproduct of that. But what I didn't realize is how satisfying. I minimized the impact that landscape has on their lives, but it has a huge impact on their life, the quality of their lives. And it's amazing the stories you hear of how much they enjoy it and how much enjoyment it brings to them and their families.
Now, when you talk about you like to turn yourself loose and you don't really have any boundaries, how are the boundaries defined as to what you have available at your palette or your resources? What do you have or what do you don't have? How does that work?
Well, for me, I spent a lot of time assembling a palette, a ready-made palette, so I could come and do a house tomorrow. I don't have an idea and go look for the elements.
Okay.
I'm collecting. I grow elements. I stockpile.
So you
cactus.
do grow your own.
I want the best stuff available. So on my palette, a wide palette, I actually have a couple private nurseries that we grow stuff that we like to use for our landscape installations.
So there isn't really anything that you don't have, say, access to?
No, I have everything at my disposal. And
So when you wake up in the morning, that's got to be...
it's like a kid in a candy store. I just can pull from, and I have all these things, and I just grab and pull to the job and create and just kind of let it evolve as I do the project.
Any certain projects you like over others, or each one is just, its own thing? I mean, are there certain things you gravitate towards versus other ones?
Yeah, I kind of, probably my forte is a really high desert, rich look with large specimen cacti, huge boulders, elevation changes, just
How are
really.
you moving those huge, giant, what do they weigh, a ton?
Oh, no, it's not unusual for us to use a 10-ton boulder, the size of maybe half the size of a car.
Holy
That's
cow.
commonplace with us.
Where are you finding a 10-ton boulder at?
Well, we have some sources. We have some sources, and we have them trucked in, and we put them in, and you stand there. You don't see the boulder till it comes. So once you get those things on the spot, you have to create with what you have. It's very rewarding, very challenging.
And I guess you don't move that around a whole lot, right?
More than you think.
Really?
Yes.
Is it sort of like a chair in a room? I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, sometimes a little quarter turn and a little tilt, and it comes into focus, and that's perfect. And it's not right till it's right.
Wow.
And you have to just stand there, meticulously layer in these elements to get the right composition. And
So this landscape artist, is this something sort of a new thing, or is it just evolved from the architect side, or how do you see it?
I think it is a new thing.
Yeah?
I think we're pushing ground, and now because there are no boundaries, we're not taking the path of least resistance. We're really going to make a biggest impact as we possibly can. And that's something that's new. It's not a business now, it's more of a passion and a lifestyle.
Right.
Where before it was always an occupation.
So obviously you're very passionate about this. If someone else sees your work and says, that I like to work outdoors, that looks really cool, I love what he's doing. Any sort of words of wisdom, or how they maybe could get into a field like that? It's sort of kind of like you said, maybe sort of a new field, because it's not the architecture, it's the artist.
Right.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think that if somebody's interested in it, they probably have talent in that area. And so you're naturally interested. I think
Right.
you should cultivate that and be aware of your surroundings. Study interior design, art. It comes from everything. It all interrelates to each other, and start experimenting. I say experiment, expand, expound over and over again, and you'll create your own style and the confidence to be successful that will come from that.
Where are you going to go next? What's next?
It gets bigger and better. Right now, I'm thinking theme parks, hotels and things like that, where you're creating an environment. When you step into it, you're stepping into another world. And that's really fascinating for me, almost like a movie set.
Start to finish, I know every project's probably different, but an average, say, time frame maybe to do a project.
Well, a remodel of an existing home probably takes us about 3 weeks.
Okay.
Because we come in, we pull everything out, we start with a really strong foundation, and
So
that's
like
the most
just
important.
That cleans your palette, right?
We
So-
pull everything out.
Wow,
Yes,
yeah.
when in doubt, we pull it out. And so we're not limited by that. And then just like a blank canvas, with our medium as cactus, boulders, and we start building a strong foundation. That's the key.
Well, Mark, now I understand when you turn the project over, turn it back to the folks are pretty excited about it. Can you talk about that?
Yes, it's so rewarding to have them say that it exceeded their expectations.
Yeah.
They had no idea that something like this could be created, and it's their home. I had
So how does
someone,
that make them feel?
well, you know, it makes them feel like they've arrived at a destination every day when they come home from work, and they wake up in paradise, and they've never been outside before, and now they're spending all kinds of time outside, even having conversation. They come home and say hello to their landscape every day, to new surprises year round. It's pretty cool.
Well, I hope we can catch up with you down the road and see what you're doing, you know, in a few months from now. But I mean, obviously, we've got a great chance to see your work today, and it is pretty amazing. And you obviously have a lot of passion in what you do. So
Yes,
thanks
thank
so
you very
much
much,
for coming
Trey.
on the
Thank you
show.
for having me.
Well, that's our show, and I hope you enjoyed it. Hey, if you missed a past episode or you have a comment you'd like to send to us, go to the web at InsideCreativeMinds.com. Until next time,